Welcome to Innovation in the Burg, a podcast where science, innovation, and community come together right here in St. Petersburg, Florida. If you're curious about the amazing people and projects shaping our city's future, you're in the right place. I'm Alison Barlow, CEO of the St. Petersburg Innovation District, and I'm joined by Christine Wooley, Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty at Eckerd College. After more than 3 decades away, the Tampa native returned home to Florida, drawn by Eckerd's engaged students, dedicated faculty, and mission-driven approach to education. She now leads the college's academic vision, helping to shape an educational experience that prepares students to tackle real-world challenges while strengthening connections between the classroom and the community. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I have to add, I didn't say it in our intro, but you joined the Innovation District Board recently. Yes. Not so recently now, it's been several months. Mm-hmm. But I love that because though the Innovation District has a geographical boundary, we are also tied to our partners around the community in different topic areas, and education is one of them.
The first time we talked, I felt like I was itching to be a part of this project. I think it's so important for schools like Eckerd to be a part of that conversation and to really be thinking about the way that the work of something like the Innovation District can impact the student experience and also how our students can potentially get to be a part of a kind of intentional endeavor to transform a city. Like, I want them to see that kind of project.
I think it's great because it's such an interesting world. Like, when I joined the Innovation District, I had no idea these things existed. I kind of went to my first interview kind of clueless a little bit. But it was this idea that there are these people and these organizations and these collaborators who are thinking about the next thing for our community.
Yeah. And I don't think, well, I don't want to speak for all students, but I know some of our students don't have the knowledge that when new things happen in their cities or new neighborhoods are established or new sectors come in, they don't know that can come from intention and not just luck, that actually takes planning and forethought and collaboration across different kinds of groups and constituencies. So in addition to the kinds of job or experiential learning opportunities students might have, I also want them to understand the ways that individuals can really plan the places that they live in and help to shape them for to create a better set of opportunities for folks in the future.
Oh, and there's so many things. I mean, we could dive into that. I now, having been in this role, see, I'm like, oh, that's a trigger. That's a thing you should pay attention to because that's going to have a ripple effect. And so we mentioned the intro. You grew up in Tampa, then you left. Similar story to me. I grew up in St. Pete, left as well. I was gone for about 15 plus years. You were gone for longer.
Well, I left for college, and so while I was always coming home to visit family and to see friends and things like that, once I left for college, I worked out of the state. I went to graduate school, also out of state, and then I got a job in the state of Maryland at another liberal arts college, and I spent 18 years there before making the jump to Eckerd 3 years ago.
And we were talking before that having both of us sort of had the aha, and probably not at the time our parents thought it made sense, but later, that where you go to college, that experience can really shape your connectivity to your next steps.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because when I was first starting to think about colleges, my dad really wanted me to stay local, stay in the state. Then as I started to think beyond options in Florida, he really wanted me to stay in the Southeast. And I always saw that as him just wanting me to be closer to our family. But I now see it a little bit differently because if you have certain kinds of experiences during your college years, they really can map so closely onto the communities that you want to be a part of. And in so many ways, you are getting trained, especially at a residential liberal arts college like Eckerd. You are getting trained not just to be a learner, to get depth in certain areas of study, but how to be a member of a community. Yeah. And what makes Eckerd's connection to St. Pete so exciting to me is the ways that, at least for some of our students, whether they're local and they come to Eckerd, or they come from out of state and they stay in St. Pete, they're getting training on our campus that helps them to see how they could be an active part of a St. Pete community that I think really needs students like Eckerd students.
Well, for sure, and then they get that exposure, and then they're inclined to stay in St. Pete.
Right.
And I got to tell you,
Absolutely.
there's so many in, particularly our marine science community,
Yes.
who can point to Eckerd as being a key step in their educational pathway.
Absolutely. Our marine science program, of course, I think is what most people know us for, and that those students who have come through that program have ended up in all kinds of places in the local area and in the state that have shown that the kind of preparation they're getting at Eckerd is really helping them to make a difference in the organizations that they join. Of course, we send a lot to grad school, particularly to USF.
Yep.
We have a really strong connection with their program, their College of Marine Science.
Well, and also, I mean, you have a program around computer science that most people don't know about. And then just the idea of a really strong liberal arts background.
Yes.
I mean, in the age of artificial intelligence coming more prevalent, new technologies, it's almost more about critical thinking.
Oh, yes.
And so what is your take on sort of the role of somebody like Eckerd in this? Because I think it's tremendous.
Yeah, so one of the things that we know about AI is that in the coming years, AI is likely to take those entry-level jobs.
Right.
And that means that the kinds of positions that can't be as easily replicated by an AI agent are going to be the sorts of jobs that really require a human being, that require what you could really broadly think of as human skills. Also, the ability to assess, right, the product that you're getting from an AI agent. So to me, the kinds of work that students do in traditional liberal arts programs and in some of the more innovative programs that liberal arts colleges sometimes house are really giving them a kind of practice in exactly those skills: critical thinking, problem solving, strong communication. Whether you are writing something yourself or assessing what someone else or something else has written, you need to understand your audience, you need to understand the purpose of the work, and you can't tell if it's any good if you don't have those skills. Although everyone, right, feels the disruption that AI is bringing to our industries, including higher education, I do think there's a way in which we're really having to think about and make sure that that our constituencies understand that a lot of the work that happens in our classrooms is the sort of work that gets students ready for those kind of human-based positions that we know will continue even in the age of AI.
Well, I love where you were going with that, because I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I got asked recently when I was speaking in front of an audience, what do I think about AI and jobs? And I said, I totally agree with you. The entry-level jobs are the jobs at most risk, at least initially,
right?
I'm sure that will evolve. I mean, when you
Sure.
start thinking about vibe coding and some things that you can now do that are maybe going to get more accelerated and more, so first and foremost for me, it's two things. One is that the young person coming into the workforce is going to have to stand out, because those few limited entry-level jobs are going to be highly competitive. And they need to have something about their character, about their skill set, about the way in which they approach things that will stand out in the crowd.
Yeah.
And then your point about, hey, you need to be able to discern when you look at something that an AI agent did, what is the right context, or even what are the right questions to ask the agent to be able to get that result.
Right.
The prompting. I always tell everybody, you got to learn how to prompt, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even beyond those kinds of sort of nuts and bolts skills of how you're going to engage with that kind of technology, I also think that we need students becoming employees who are creative, who have curiosity, who are good researchers, right? Whatever the tools that they're working with. And I think most importantly, that have a sense of the values that guide them. And what a liberal arts education can and should do is to give students not only that sort of broad base in the sort of traditional fields of study, but also the way to transfer knowledge from one field to another. That is where you get the kind of sense of greater, of how your values are going to guide decision making. Mm-hmm. And that to me is also critically important at this particular time. Not that I would discount the importance in the past.
But I completely agree with you.
I want values-driven decision making from our students, and our experience at Eckerd gives them a chance to practice that.
Well, and something you were talking about too, that broad base of understanding. Very much, I know there's a theme about going to higher ed that we want to make sure that students are going to come out with a job.
Yes.
Right? So ultimately, we're not talking the absence of marketable skills. We're just talking about everything that goes with that. So they might deep dive on computer science or graphic design but the idea also that these skills they're developing are translatable to other opportunities.
Yes.
Because I know that when I was coming up in my career, everybody was your one thing. You are going to have a finance career. You're going to have a tech career. You're going to be one thing. And I spent a huge part of my career in consulting. And so that was all about not one thing.
Absolutely.
But that reusable toolkit that you just had in your back pocket.
Yes.
And I think the jobs I'm seeing are going more that direction, or maybe I'm predisposed that way.
I think I am too.
Okay.
In the sense that when I think about what our students are doing in the classroom now, right? They have majors, and which means they are getting a kind of deep dive in a particular subject, and then they're getting their sort of breadth of experiences as well from other course experiences. But when I was a student, I think my professors were quite happy to have me have a range of experiences, and then to trust that I knew how to put them all together and see their relevance, see how they were connected, see how they might get me, sort of jumpstart into certain areas, or to realize that a certain set of skills might actually put me in an area I didn't expect. I don't think today's students are necessarily making all those connections themselves. And so what's on us to do is to give them the kinds of tools that help them to see those connections more clearly, and especially to give them experiences where they can apply their classroom skills outside the classroom. And so that might be, experiential learning opportunities on campus, field-based research. It's also internships. Yep. It's finding those connections to volunteer experiences, service learning opportunities, where they're really getting a chance to see how their courses, how they're learning in a particular major or field is also something that shapes the experience that they're going to have in the work world, in the professional world. I would give a plug, too, for how in a smaller classroom where you have to work with your professor, your fellow students, you're also learning how to work in a team.
Yes.
And when I was still teaching and I would assign a group project, students often don't like a group project.
Well,
they
because
want to be on their own.
It's the dynamics.
You don't know how well the other person's going to do, or you're going to end up having to pull the weight on your team. Yep. But what I would often tell them is, what job do you think you're going to get out in the world where you're going to work only by yourself? And so getting them then to think about how these experiences actually are connected to not just a particular field, but to the way they will do their work, and the way that they will have to interact with other people, how they will have to approach conversations, questions, assignments, such that it's professional, but it's also productive, right, for the project, the group that they're involved in. That's also a really big part of what we offer.
I think particularly, that's such an important lesson. I would say almost everything I do has to involve another person.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
There's never a time.
No.
And they're widely different individuals and ways in which they work and priorities and interests and all of that. And I think the challenge is that I have to figure out how to make that happen.
Right.
And at the same time, I have now in my career some content that I can bring to the table. I have that but in my early career, that was not there. Right. I didn't have the depth of content. I had what I learned on a book and maybe a job, internship or something. Yeah. But a lot of what was how was I operating in that environment, learning trying to figure it all out, because you still learn. School, it's not over.
No, I was just going to say, like, what kind of learner are you,
Yeah.
right? And what's in your toolkit when it comes to having to approach something new? No job, I mean, only the most boring job in the world would take what you know coming out of college and never change it, right? And have that be static. Like, that one is not the way the world works. But it would be terrible if it were, right? Like, to have your experience always being the same, like frozen in time, like, that would be terrible. And so for students to really experience and to get good at learning, that's something that is going to shape all the work that they do, right? And the work they do in their community. I mean, I know for good reason, talking about jobs and employment opportunities for college students, but I'm also often interested in the ways they're going to be members of their communities. And those communities might be families, neighborhoods, nonprofit organizations, all kinds of places where they might find themselves, where they're going to use those skills of how they engage with other people and then get something done.
And that's something I love about the value of St. Petersburg. And one of the reasons I came back was there is this value of you spend time at work, but you also are kind of expected to contribute to your community, whether it is through your local neighborhood association or a nonprofit you get excited about, or even just showing up around a topic that you get passionate about. I always used to say that was one of my frustrations living in DC, was that capacity, even though I had an interest, wasn't there. The days were long, the commutes were big. There wasn't that ability. And I love that Eckerd, you mentioned a couple different ways, through the service learning, through the volunteer hours. We've had Eckerd students come to the Innovation District and do some just career exploration, because there are careers that we're seeing happening right now that are not showing up in the textbooks because they are evolving so quickly.
Yeah, and we often tell students, like, we actually might not know, right, what field you're going to end up in because it's actually not here yet.
Exactly.
And that is something we want them to be thinking of. Our students, so I have a now 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. And one of the things that I was quite struck by, as soon as my oldest got to middle school, all of a sudden she was getting surveys, right, about like what kinds of things might be of interest. And so starting in middle school and maybe younger, this kind of more targeted conversation about what their career path is going to be. And I was so struck by the fact that, like, what 11-year-old, 12-year-old knows where they're going, and particularly right now, where job opportunities are changing so fast. But I think students are trained to think that way.
I think so too.
And to think that way very early on, and there are good reasons, right? If there's economic uncertainty, you want to know that you're going through a process, an experience, a degree that's going to help you with the next stage of your career, help you to be financially stable. But at the same time, that toolkit that you're gathering over the years of your education is actually more flexible than that kind of one-to-one relationship might lead you to believe. I don't think that a history major coming out of a liberal arts college is only trained or capable of being a history teacher, right? And that would be, I think of lots of examples like that. But that major's got great communication skills. They've presented, they've worked on teams to do projects, they've done research, and they've learned how to evaluate knowledge, how to develop a research plan. There's all kinds of relevance of those skills. And if you couple in things like this, so if you have students doing podcasts or other kinds of different opportunities to display their learning, to develop their communication skills, it's a really strong set of tools to have in your toolkit, right? Moving forward to a
But I think
new
you hit on it, is the students need to be able to tell that story.
Yes, exactly.
And the employers need to be able to hear that story, for sure. And I also think that there's a big piece on, you don't pick your forever job generally when you're in college.
No.
You're picking your first job or your first step.
Right. That's
and
right.
that is, but I know, like, I went from hospitality to tech, and that transition, the way that worked was because there were skill sets I was able to isolate and say, okay, I have really good project management skills because this is how I use them, and I've got really great customer service skills that could work on a client engagement in a consulting world. And some of that I had help from my professors in articulating out of grad school, and then some of it just sort of evolved over time.
Yes.
But I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Sometimes students don't know how to say that.
I agree, and they think so much at times about like the content they like,
Yeah.
right? And we see that a lot with our marine science students, our animal studies students. They're coming because they know the areas of study that they're really passionate about. What is harder for students to sometimes see is how the skills that they are learning through their engagement with that topic really can be also a source of joy,
Yeah.
and a source of engagement or expertise. I think about this, maybe not all the time, but
Frequently.
enough where coming out of college, I knew I liked to work with people. I knew I liked being part of a team. I knew I was a good communicator, but I did not know how to think about those particular skills as the things that would drive my job search. So I did, and I had some pushes that helped get me into some fields that weren't directly connected to my major and things like that. But I wasn't thinking long term about the kind of pleasure that I should take in work and what I already knew about what I liked to do. And it's not to say that, I went to grad school, but
Yeah.
you work alone a lot in
Yeah.
grad school. I taught for many years. You work alone a lot as a teacher. You also are in front of students, so that's very
Right.
satisfying.
But there is.
There's prep and grading, and that's like you and a sad stack of papers, you know?
Yep.
And I think that early on, I actually was having all kinds of experiences that were telling me, like, you might not want that much alone time.
Oh, I got you.
And I
You
didn't
realize that was about
I
yourself
didn't
until you
realize
did that.
until I got into positions in the academy that were putting me in using up my time in meetings, which most of my professor colleagues would be like, I hate meetings.
And
right?
you were like, okay.
I'm like, well, maybe they're not so
It's
bad.
bad.
you
Because
know?
I
I'm
get
getting-
joy out of, or
I-
the progress you can make in the
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, the things you get to engage with, the ways that other people are going to make your ideas better.
Yeah.
Right? Like a good meeting is generative. Like you walk out with ideas you didn't have when you came in, and that doesn't happen if you're sitting by yourself in front of your computer. So I think I had these clues and I didn't know how to put them together. And
Yeah.
now I really feel like it's on us to make sure that students, when they go out and they have internship experiences or they're finding that they like certain kinds of activities on campus, that we're helping them to understand what that means about themselves and how that might also sort of widen the funnel in terms of the things they might consider for their future. It's easy to say, I came to Eckerd because I love sharks or dolphins, or I want to know about climate change and sea level rise, but they're also potentially leaving with a wider range of experiences that they really could apply to a really wide range of opportunities.
Well, and I think that puts the onus on the community, and so the community members who are listening, to create opportunities for students from Eckerd to have these
would love
exposures. Yeah, because I think, I jokingly say, we get the annual set of calls, usually around the time internships are going to be opening up, and everybody wants to, quote, play with dolphins. And I'm like, there's not that many jobs in the world that are actually playing with dolphins.
No.
And sad to say, because we all would love to play with dolphins. But I'm like, what else are you interested in?
Yeah.
What else? And I think it's the exposure to different things that are maybe on the side of, and I'm being very facetious when I say play with dolphins, but you know what I mean. I mean, there's animal behavior, there's animal care, there's research, there's policy, and then there's other animals that are in the ecosystem.
Well, and I think we certainly have students who are going to grad school, right? And they're going to stick with marine science. That is going to be their area of focus. But when I think about the things that might draw you to that area of study, and the ways that then your work might really broadly speaking, allow you to engage with that area. It's hard for me not to think about climate change, but if you love the water, you love the coastal areas, and that's what you chose to study as a college student, when you leave here, you have all kinds of potential opportunities to engage with whether they're governmental opportunities, policy work. These these are also critical needs.
Oh, and even civic engineering and
Sure.
construction.
Yeah.
And I mean, you
Absolutely.
really could, if you think about it, open your
Yeah.
aperture. So we're running
Yes,
out of
that's right.
time. It's always surprising how quickly these
Has gone
conversations
very
go.
fast.
What's coming up for Eckerd? Anything you want to highlight? And
Well, our year is driven by, the academic calendar.
Okay.
And so coming up mid-July, July 17th, we'll have our second open house of the summer, which means we're inviting high school juniors to come onto
Nice.
campus and check out all of the sort of cool stuff that's going on at Eckerd, to get to know the campus, get to know our faculty. So we are always looking for students and families to come check us out. And then things will really start, heating up again when we bring students back in August. Our first-year students come for autumn term. They're here for 3 weeks before the rest of the campus returns the first on Labor Day. So they're here
Nice.
the weekend before Labor Day, and then we start our classes Labor Day, and then we're really off and running.
And I'll put in a little plug. We were talking about as two kids who grew up in the Tampa Bay
Yeah.
region. Both of us never even considered Eckerd
No, I always
as a
feel so
viable
bad
option for
saying
school.
that out loud.
I know. I'm just sorry. I think
It was a long time ago.
it was.
And
We're
there
just
was
going to
no
blame
internet.
it. Yeah. So for anybody listening, if you have a young person
Yeah.
in your family or you know someone in the region, it may be worth it to check this out because it could
Absolutely.
be another option they didn't even think about that they
Yeah.
may not realize.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so fun.
This
Thank
was.
you.
So just a quick reminder, it's our 10th anniversary of the Innovation District, and this year we want to see a big turnout for our different events, like our Tech Exchanges Monthly held at the Maritime and Defense Tech Hub. You can learn about those events and others at our website, which is stpeteinnovationdistrict.com. Thank you all for tuning in and being part of St. Pete's incredible story. We'll see you next time.